Before this video starts, I'd just like to make an announcement. I have the Liberal Tears mug for $14.99 on my website. It is the first link in the description if you want to go pick one up. Don't worry if it breaks when it comes to your house. I'll send you another one for free out of my pocket. I don't care. I want you to get your Liberal Tear mug. It comes in Liberal Tears white with the face, black with the face, white without the face, and black without the face. So pick whichever one you want, and it'll come to your door in about 3 to 5 days. So that should be epic. First link in the description. Thank you. Let's go on with the video.
Your analysis, there's not any racist history with Donald Trump. He's a New Yorker, he has New York values. In the press during the campaign, there were accusations that he and his father were discriminating against black people in his properties when he was focused on the real estate market. Do you want to address that claim?
Sure. The discrimination laws in America since the 1960s can be interpreted in two ways and actually have two completely separate meanings. The first is what you would call discrimination in the old sense. Discrimination in the old sense is something like this. A white guy and a black guy apply for a job. The black guy is better qualified, the white guy gets the job. That is discrimination in the classic sense, right? In other words, you have the more qualified guy should get the job, the more qualified guy is African American, but the white guy gets the job even though he's less qualified. That's classic discrimination. If you actually look at housing discrimination suits, real estate lawsuits today, I would submit to you that out of 100 in the country, less than 5 are of that nature. Most of the discrimination suits in America today have to do with statistics. And statistics the argument goes something like this. At Walmart in Tulsa, Oklahoma, African Americans are 8% of the surrounding population, but they are only 4% of employees at Walmart. Therefore, Walmart is discriminating, and the EEOC will file, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, in conjunction with the Justice Department, will file a lawsuit. Now, I want to emphasize that this may be true or false, but it doesn't have anything to do with discrimination in the classic sense. What essentially is, there's an underlying assumption of proportional representation. And when that proportionality is violated, there's a presumption of discrimination and a burden on the part of the employer, or in this case the contractor, to prove why there is a numerical discrepancy between the ambient population and your workforce. If you look at the Trump lawsuits to look at what is the basis of the proof that he discriminated. You have foremen that said, blacks don't need to apply over here. We're not hiring any blacks. First of all, try getting away with something like this in New York City. It would be the death knell of Trump's company to even move in this direction. Most large companies have been sued for discrimination. Virtually no company is, over the past 30 years, completely exempt. Almost all companies have adopted various affirmative action plans in settlement of these suits. Sometimes the suits are for the purpose of getting those plans into place. I only mention this to say, to me, this is not a closed issue. This is an issue that if you want to make a case, you have to go into the concreteness of the evidence. It's not enough to say, hey, the Justice Department filed a suit, therefore Trump is discriminating. That is only the beginning of the inquiry and not the end of it. So look into it some more.
Can I raise another question?
Sure. But just be brief.
Yeah, there was another case where Trump wasn't involved, but it was the Central Park 5 case where 5 black people were charged with rape. After a series of trials, they eventually occurred. They found the actual rapist in the case. And even after that acquittal and after they found the actual rapist, Trump continually said that those 5 black people did the crime and should be in jail. Now, to anyone who passes law, that would be erroneous. There's already a criminal who's been in jail for this. They didn't do the crime. Why are we dragging this case on? The explanation that anyone had in the media was that Trump is making a racist charge. Do you want to address that?
I wish I knew more about it. If it is the case that Trump knowingly said that, he would be culpable for doing it. That would be no defense, no excuse for that. Trump does shoot his mouth off. There's no question about it. He says things that he doesn't know much about. When he was first hit with these white supremacist groups, normally in politics, people have a certain degree of innate caution. which is the result of knowing that you're walking in a minefield, right? Now, if you bring in an outsider like Trump, it's going to come with pluses and minuses. Remember, no outsider, and by outsider I mean someone who's not a senator, not a governor, has been elected president since Eisenhower, who was the supreme commander of World War II and very diplomatic. With Trump, you're getting, in a way, an outsider who brings, in some ways, the refreshing candor, openness, and sort of outrageousness of it, but with some liabilities. And I think, and the one question about Trump in the presidency is, what will he learn when he's on the job? And we'll have to wait and see. But again, I don't know enough about that particular incident, so I can't address it specifically.
Decided, for example, that men can be women and women can be men. I just think there's no scientific basis for that whatsoever. But do whatever the hell you want. I don't care. I mean, like, it's your business. You want to do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. Like, this idea that I'm discriminating against you because, you know, I am calling you by your biological sex. You know, you don't have a right to tell me what to say. So that's it. So you do what you want. Get whatever treatment you feel like. Wear whatever you want. Be you. I don't care. But, you know, this idea that you get to tell me what to do or say, that's silly, because I'm not telling you what to do or say. As far as same-sex marriage, my perspective on this has been clear for many years. I've always felt that long before they legalized same-sex marriage in the state of California, I said that same-sex marriage should not be a government issue. I thought the government should be completely out of the issue of marriage completely, mainly because the government sucks at things, and also because from a conservative point of view, I also think that the government approving particular types of marriage is going to provide a club for particular political groups to beat down on churches. So the next thing is going to be, okay, same-sex marriage has now been approved by the state of California. 501c3 groups, churches that don't wish to perform same-sex marriage are now going to have their 501c3 status removed because they're discriminating against gay couples. That's the next step. So the solution to this is not to allow that discrimination against religious people and religious institutions to take place. The best step after that is to ensure that the state just gets out of it completely. And, you know, I feel the same way about marijuana, even though I have never smoked pot and I find people who smoke pot irritating. It's not my business, right? It's not the government's business either. So I think that the government getting out of all of these things is actually a good pitch because, again, I'm leaving you alone. I think it's actually a winning campaign now with Trump in office because the left hates Trump so much that they keep thinking, oh my God, we created this massive machine and now someone we desperately hate is in charge of it. Like, hey, welcome to the last 8 years, gang. You know, but it's... But the best solution to that is, okay, you don't like Trump. I didn't like Obama. Guess what? We can make all of these people not matter to our lives. All we have to do is just make the government not that big. And then I don't care what Trump does, and I don't care what Obama does, and they'll just be egotists who live in big cities and bother, you know, whoever will listen to them at the bar. This is the biggest problem. You know, the fact is that when the government is big, who is in charge matters. When the government is small, you don't have to care.
So I'll let you have your Marco Rubio moment. There's a lot of college students in the club or in the audience, and I think, or even younger, or people that have graduated but still young, and even some college Republicans here. You know, not everybody could become a nationally syndicated columnist at 17. What advice do you have for younger people that are wanting to get started in their career or conservatives on campus? Mm-hmm. You know, how do they make the most of their lives?
So I'll give you the same advice Andrew Breitbart gave to a lot of people. If you have a cell phone that's a camera, you're now a journalist. So it is your job to go out there and find information that no one else is privy to, particularly if you're on campus. That stuff has widespread public appeal. If you see a story, send it to me at Daily Wire, and we'll put it up. I mean, we'll cover it. And if you want to write. You know, you're going to have to write for free at the beginning. Everyone does. I did. And then eventually you move from sort of reporting news to your perspective actually being interesting, because you can infuse your opinion into the news in a way that's interesting. And then people want to hear what you have to say. Everybody thinks they're going to be Charles Krauthammer, but everybody sort of has to start off as John Stossel. You all have to start off reporting things, and then you can move into an area where people actually care about what you have to say, if you're lucky. But everyone has an opinion, and your opinion doesn't matter more than anybody else's until you're bringing information to people that they've never heard before.
So, completely changed subjects. Biggest threat to America right now, and why?
I think the biggest threat to America is tribalism. I think that tribalism has broken out on the left and the right. People don't seem to care about the truth anymore. They seem to care about whether it helps my side or helps your side. And that is really, really dangerous, because then we can no longer have a conversation. If we can't agree on a common basis of fact, we can't have a conversation in the first place. If you're just going to assume that I'm evil on the basis of my political perspective, then we can't have a conversation. And I'm seeing it both on the right and the left, which is troubling to me, because I always thought that this was sort of a an endemic to the left. I didn't think it was endemic to the right. I think that Obama has sort of trolled the right into oblivion, and the right now has become reactionary in response. And so it's, okay, so Trump said something that's not true, but he really screwed with the left's head, didn't he? And so, well, so what? I mean, that's not hard. It's the easiest thing in the world is to screw with the left's head. I mean, and that's really not difficult. And on the left, the same sort of thing. You'll see the left say that Trump has proposed a Muslim ban. No, he didn't propose a Muslim ban. On the right, you'll see that people say Trump has proposed, Trump actually had a bigger inauguration crowd size than Obama, right? A plurality of Republicans believe that by polls. That's silly. Okay, it's not true. And just because you like Trump doesn't make it true. And this basic philosophy, I think, is really dangerous for the Republic as a whole.
What do you think about the whole fake news thing? There's actually a bill in California now where they actually want to create a curriculum in high schools to educate students on what fake news is.
Okay, well, I mean, first of all, the high schools in California should be the last people to teach people. I think that the idea that there are high schools in California may be fake news, but that's but it's, you know, the problem with fake news is mostly that people don't use it to mean actual fake news. Fake news is when you have a story that is legitimately false, right? When you put a story out there that Pizzagate is fake news, right? There's no evidence to support it. The idea that they're running some sort of child whorehouse out of a pizza shop in the middle of D.C., no evidence to back that. That's fake news. It is not fake news to say that Donald Trump is doing better than his detractors suppose, but people will say that's fake news. It is not fake news, by the way, for the polls to report what the polls reported and then get it wrong. That wasn't fake news either. The polls just got it wrong. So I think that on both sides there's been a conflation between news I don't like and fake news, and that's not the same thing. And so this is why I think that the label has lost pretty much all value.
So, North Korea, are we headed to World War III or the status quo of the last 20 years?
I would say more likely the status quo of the last 20 years. I don't think that Kim Jong-un really wants us to wipe him off the map. And that's sort of the next step, right? There's, thanks to Bill Clinton, we have an unpalatable situation there, but I'm not sure that it's going to go anywhere. I mean, the fact is that we don't have the wherewithal, from as much as I can see. We don't have the wherewithal to actually take out the Kim family. We don't have the wherewithal to take out all of the artillery that's now lined up against Seoul at one shot. So that means that he's got 20,000 pieces of ordnance that are pointed at Seoul, which puts several million people in direct danger of death if we should do anything about this. The smartest move that Kim Jong-un ever made, or his father Kim Jong-il ever made, was to develop nuclear weapons, because now it's basically impossible to get rid of him unless we put significant pressure on the Chinese to replace him with somebody else. And the thing the Chinese want less even than the thing that they are most fearful of is the reunification of the Korean Peninsula. That, of course, is what they are most afraid of. So they would rather have a crazy person in charge of that country that they at least have some semblance of control over than a reunified, democratic, and free Korea, which is tragic, but I think that status quo is basically as good as it's going to get, you know, barring some sort of exigent circumstance.
So what do you think what's going on in France? What do you think Le Pen and just the whole, where do you think that's going?
I mean, I think Le Pen's going to lose. I mean, I think that it's the fact is that anybody who is trying to compare that to Brexit or compare it to Trump, all of those polls were within 2 points, 3 points. These polls are not close. These polls are 26 points out. Now, could I be wrong? Of course I could be wrong. I was wrong about the last election cycle. But again, I would say that the margin of error is not 26 points in France. And pretty much everyone is unified against Le Pen. She made the move to disassociate from National Front today in a vain attempt to make people forget that she actually is a member of the National Front. I don't think that that's going to work particularly well. But it is obviously it is indicative of a great split that is happening in the Western world now between what's weird about what Trump said in this election cycle is he basically ran a European-style far-right campaign in America, and it worked. Whenever he says globalist, he's not actually talking about globalism. When he talks about free trade is not globalist, okay? The UN is a global institution. That's globalist. The EU is globalist. You have a regulatory agency somewhere that's dictating to you what you can do. Le Pen is running that against an actual globalist, right? Macron is actually a globalist. He's somebody who believes in the EU. He's somebody who believes that international institutions should cram down rules on the French, and he's winning there. Trump was doing this on the basis of, like, he doesn't like NAFTA. That's not globalism. That's a free trade agreement we signed with some other countries. But it does demonstrate that there is a real backlash to the feeling that national interests are being sold down the river, and I think that is common to Europe. I think it's common to the United States. I think that the likening of Le Pen to Trump is a little bit strong for my taste. I don't think that they're as much alike as people say they are. But I do think that there is a broader anger at the idea that people no longer take their national interests to heart and that they are willing to put the national interest secondary to their own priorities. And that I do think is common.
So we got a stack of audience questions, and I'm going to start going through some of these. And you all have an opportunity later to actually come and ask your own questions more as well. First one is, I actually think, a very important question. If you had a lightsaber, what color would it be?
Well, I mean, the good part of me would like to say green, but it'd have to be red, right? I mean, that's the...
I actually noticed you were wearing a Star Wars backpack.
Oh, yeah, the Rogue One backpack. Yeah, my sister got that for me for my birthday. Great movie.
Well, then what do you think of Episode 8? Are you excited for that?
I mean, the trailer looks awful. I'll be honest with you. I thought Episode 7 was dramatically overrated. I thought Force Awakens... First of all, don't ruin my childhood. They ruined my childhood. I grew up on the Star Wars films. Spoiler alert, okay? They ruin your childhood. So that's it. Rogue One was, I thought, better than Force Awakens.
So this is actually from the same person. How can you have a law to not follow the law, i.e. sanctuary cities?
Well, I mean, you can do that on a federalist basis in the sense that you can't commandeer a local law enforcement agency to enforce federal law. But the federal government obviously has the capacity to cut off funding for your city, and that's what Trump is considering doing. So this is, on a federalist level, I appreciate the idea of a local government telling the feds to screw themselves. They're just doing it on the wrong topic.
So this person started with, love you, Ben, so I had to start with that.
Thanks, sweetheart.
Do you have any advice on how to talk to people who are so convinced you're a bad person just because of your political beliefs? I believe this is a very present issue here in the Bay Area.
Yeah, I mean, my typical opener with them is stop being an asshole. And the reason that I say that, is because the left's arguments are largely based on the idea of an unearned moral superiority, not that their policies are better, you are a bad person, therefore you must not be listened to. And you have to rip that unearned moral superiority away from them. It turns out that calling somebody a bad person without evidence makes you kind of an asshole. So once we've established that we can sit here and call each other assholes all day, then maybe we can actually get down to the content of the argument. But that has to be put out of the way first, for sure.
All right, this is more serious. Who is more of an existential threat to the Jewish state, liberal Ashkenazi Jews or Hezbollah?
Well, I mean, as far as an existential threat to the Jewish state, okay, so obviously the greatest threat to the death of Jews right now is Hezbollah. As far as the existential threat to the Jewish state, I wouldn't say liberal Ashkenazi Jews. I'm not sure what ethnicity has to do with it, but I would say that Jews of the left are certainly a greater threat to the Jewish state than any temporary terrorist group, because Israel is a very powerful country. It can survive onslaughts from terrorist groups. It could destroy Hezbollah if it so chose. But it's the same question, basically, as whether the American left is more of a threat to the future of the country than Islamic terrorism. And the answer, in my view, is yes. That doesn't mean that the American left is more of a threat to the life and limb of Americans today than Islamic terrorism. Of course not. But the future of a country rests on the solidity of its ideological underpinnings. And as those underpinnings are cut away, you end up losing the character of the country, and that's how you lose a country.
What are your favorite news sources?
So I don't go really by news source. I go by individuals. So I don't think CNN, for example, is like, I don't go by brands. So I think that I think Jake Tapper is good. I think Bret Baier on Fox is good. I think that there's reporters at the New York Times. I think Maggie Haberman is actually a pretty good reporter. I think that there's people at various outlets that I like, and there are people at various outlets that I don't like, but you have to sort of be aware of who these folks are. I think Rosie Gray at The Atlantic is a good reporter. I think that there are a bunch of good reporters all over the country in various outlets, but people tend to do the stupid thing, which is, I saw it on Fox News, it's true. I saw it on CNN. CNN is fake news, right? And this is and it's just not accurate. I mean, like, sometimes people on Fox News say stupid crap, and sometimes people on CNN say stupid crap. And I will say I'm irritated by the constant use of the fact-checking chyrons on CNN after 8 years of swallowing direct tripe from President Obama. On the way in, I was watching CNN, God help me, and I was on a plane, so I couldn't walk out. So it was, but they were running the chyrons, and then in parentheses, like, this isn't true. It's like, where were you when Barack Obama was saying, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor? And it's really, that stuff is really irritating, for sure.
So I don't know if you actually said this, but we're going to find out. You have compared socialism to rape and capitalism to consensual sex. Why is a proud socialist like Bernie Sanders still so popular?
So yes, I did in a figurative sense, of course. So so the idea was that taking people's property and taking their livelihood and their labor without their consent, if you were going to make a sexual comparison, would be more akin to rape. And capitalism is more akin to consensual sex, where both parties are hopefully enjoying a mutual exchange of benefits. But why is Bernie Sanders so popular? Because his baseline is to say things aren't fair, and then everybody goes, yeah, things aren't fair, and then he has no solution for that other than to say things aren't fair. And people on the right go, well, yeah, I mean, we know things aren't fair. What you can do about it? Well, that's less of a sell. Right? What people really want to hear is that my opinion that things aren't fair really matters. It really matters deeply. So the other day I got in trouble on Twitter because Bernie Sanders tweeted something out about how if you work 40 hours minimum wage in every major city in America, you can't afford a one-bedroom apartment. And I tweeted out, right, that's why we have studio apartments, and that's why we need to, and that's why we have roommates, and that's why we need to, aspire to things more than working minimum wage, and this is why you need to, and this is why we need to relieve a lot of the housing rules and regulations that prevent building of additional units, right? These would actually be solutions to the problem that he is suggesting, but this is unpopular. It's much more popular to just say, the world is unfair, give me power. And unfortunately, I feel like this is kind of crossed the spectrum. So the way Sanders is about every economic issue is the way that Trump is about free trade. Right? So Trump, instead of he'll say, if you just give me total power, I will bring the jobs back to Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania. And it's like, no, dude, you won't. Okay, you won't. I'm sorry. Like this idea that you're going to reverse technology, which has taken 85% of the manufacturing jobs in the United States that have been lost due to manufacturing. The idea that you're going to roll that back, what are you going to do, break the machines? Is that really what is good for the United States? And then when he says that he's going to impose tariffs, okay, so...
Hello, everyone. Hey, I'm just stopping by to remind you that liberals are insane. Social justice warriors are becoming more violent and triggered than ever before. Anyways, be sure to subscribe to KGP TV on YouTube and have a blessed day. Yeah, man.
Tell me what you
lawyer, or in this case the contractor, to prove why there is a numerical discrepancy between the ambient population and your workforce. If you look at the Trump lawsuits to look at what is the basis of the proof that he discriminated, you have foremen that said, blacks don't need to apply over here. We're not hiring any blacks. First of all, try getting away with something like this in New York City. It would be the death knell of Trump's company to even move in this direction. Most large companies have been sued for discrimination. Virtually no company is, over the past 30 years, completely exempt. Almost all companies have adopted various affirmative action plans in settlement of... In Tulsa, Oklahoma, African Americans are 8% of the surrounding population, but they are only 4% of employees at Walmart. Therefore, Walmart is discriminating, and the EEOC will file, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, in conjunction with the Justice Department, will file a lawsuit. Now, I want to emphasize that this may be true or false, but it doesn't have anything to do with discrimination in the classic sense. What essentially is, there's an underlying assumption of proportional representation. And when that proportionality is violated, there's a presumption of discrimination and a burden on the part of the employer. The black guy is better qualified, the white guy gets the job. That is discrimination in the classic sense, right? In other words, you have the more qualified guy should get the job, the more qualified guy is African American, but the white guy gets the job even though he's less qualified. That's classic discrimination. If you actually look at housing discrimination suits, real estate lawsuits today, I would submit to you that out of 100 in the country, less than 5 are of that nature. Most of the discrimination suits in America today have to do with statistics. And statistics the argument goes something like this. At Walmart,
Before this video starts, I'd just like to make an announcement. I have the Liberal Tears mug for $14.99 on my website. It is the first link in the description if you want to go pick one up. Don't worry if it breaks when it comes to your house. I'll send you another one for free out of my pocket. I don't care. I want you to get your Liberal Tear mug. It comes in liberal tiers, white with the face, black with the face, white without the face, and black without the face. So pick whichever one you want, and it'll come to your door in about 3 to 5 days. So that should be epic. First link in the description. Thank you. Let's go on with the video.
Your analysis, there's not any racist history with Donald Trump. He's a New Yorker, he has New York values. In the press during the campaign, there were accusations that he and his father were discriminating against black people in his properties when he was focused on the real estate market. Do you want to address that claim?
Sure. The discrimination laws in America since the 1960s can be interpreted in two ways and actually have two completely separate meanings. The first is what you would call discrimination in the old sense. Discrimination in the old sense is something like this. A white guy and a black guy apply for a job.